The Manitoba Advocate for Children and Youth wish to acknowledge that we are located on the original lands of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and the beautiful homeland of the MACY Nation.
We are here for our first episode, Youth Engagement Live TRC discussions. And I am John with Manitoba Advocate for Children and Youth Engagement Coordinator.
My name is Cathy Cook. I am another Youth Engagement Coordinator with the pleasure of working and spending time with these two fantastic folks in addition to our youth ambassadors.
Hi, and I'm Cheryl Alexander. I'm the knowledge keeper here at the Manitoba Advocate for Children and Youth. So welcome to today's episode. We're not jumping in right at number 1 for the TRC calls to action. We're going to start on number 40. And this one today discusses that we call on all levels of government in collaboration with Aboriginal people to create adequately funded and accessible Aboriginal-special victims programs, services with appropriate evaluation mechanisms. That's not a light mouthful.
No.
So let's jump into that.
Very heavy first episode for this.
Gotta put my glasses on.
So with this particular call to action, again, it's pretty loaded. But again, calling on government to collaborate with Aboriginal people, with Indigenous service providers, to make sure that we are creating adequately funded, so equitable funding for our Indigenous folks, as well as access. So one of the things that jumps out at me here is when we look at services for Indigenous people that are kind of with an Indigenous lens or
Within the community?
There's very, very limited accessibility to many of these different services for our folks that are up in the north or on remote communities or not within the kind of confines of our perimeter. So making sure that, again, everything is accessible and equitable for all people.
And you know what, I like the wording they chose with this TRC and saying all levels of government, because it's just like with people, it doesn't just fall on one person, it's all people, all levels of government, making this commitment to this TRC call to action number 40.
Mm-hmm. So this recommendation focuses on Aboriginal people as regular victims within the Canadian legal system and larger society. Just being a frontline worker in my experience, this population is highly overrepresented in the Canadian legal system, the judicial system. So it's asking that it be properly funded, available to Canada's Aboriginal people. In terms of reconciliation, this is key to rebuilding the relationship between Aboriginal people and the Canadian government. These programs and services will rebuild the trust and good working conditions to make these programs effective. Because they're so overpopulated, key in making these programs and services effective will be that they are available at all levels and right in communities. So communities that really need it, like you say, up in the north,
Mm-hmm.
Not the hub communities, but on reserve, accessible to the youth of Canada, because there's an untapped population for the service victims.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the point of this recommendation is to draw attention to the staggering inequalities presented within the legal systems of Canada. So that also includes child welfare. Mm-hmm. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we have a lot of areas that we deal with here in this office that talk to this one. So I really wanted to start the year off on a bang. And this one has a lot of areas that we deal with on a regular basis. And one of our calls to mandate is victim services.
Yeah.
That's right.
So our agency deals a lot with children, youth, and families. And so this call to action is one that is, there's not enough programming. There's
Mm-hmm.
never going to be enough adequately funded programming to deal with all the different ways that affect families, children, and are people that need the support. And how do they gauge? One of the parts talked about appropriate evaluation mechanisms, which is very true.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we get to the law side, and then what's the aftercare?
And for anyone watching, so appropriate evaluation mechanisms, you know, what that's really, I guess, simplified into saying is ways to see what's going on, what we're doing, if it's working, and just really look at these services and the funding involved. Just in breaking down what mechanisms really means. It's just simply about overseeing what's going on, evaluating how they're doing, because we know things aren't done right the first time always, so you need to be evaluating, and things change over time for children and youth, for Aboriginal people in Canada, for all walks of life. So why not have that built into the TRC? I really like that it's about evaluating and not just
and using
doing
things
something
that work, that help support right from the process, going from the moment it happens right
Mhm.
till the aftercare, because that support is definitely needed. We have some situations that need to be addressed, and that support is key in being able to help support that victim all the way through the process.
You know, and I like, because a lot of what our work at this office involves evaluating. And how do we do that? We actually go and talk to the children and youth. So in evaluating, you have to talk to those people that are affected and receiving these services. And I think that's really key to really achieving this TRC call to action, is involving those people using these services and finding out what works and what isn't working. And that's really how, you know, how we do a lot of what our work with children and youth is asking those children and youth, what is working and what can we do better? How can we do it better?
That's
and
right.
what is an appropriate evaluation? When you look at it, I'm gonna go with what John said about those people receiving the services, they would have the best evaluation of the service they receive. So even going to the top end of that, in collaboration with all levels of government and with Aboriginal people. So when we're looking at the special victim programs, I'm thinking of things when they're doing sentencing, the Gladue report. Those are really important things that we need to understand where someone is coming from. How did they get caught up in the justice system? And what are we doing to make sure, again, it's that aftercare. So with the lack of accessible programs for many of our Indigenous communities within Winnipeg and outside, if we don't have these programs, what are we looking to evaluate? So we have to be really creative and think outside the box. So calling on all levels of government, in addition to all levels of management in a service provision market, how are you evaluating the services that you're providing? So it should be, again, those people receiving those services really, we have to stop and we have to listen. Because again, grassroots, it starts at the bottom, right? So we have to really look at individual planning for everybody within the justice system. And again, CFS, making sure that we're collaborating. So especially with young people involved in justice, the services that we need to make sure we're providing in addition to are wraparound service from CFS, victim services.
Cultural safety and program event, because a lot of times it's coming back to one of the key indicators show that lack of sense of belonging. Don't know who they are, loss of language, cultural. So those intergenerational key factors, that they're still being escalated because they're not actually being identified and followed through. Once you start to feel that sense of belonging.
Mm-hmm.
So that is in essence the creation, right? The creation of programs or funding that are designated to make sure that everybody, Indigenous and non, have equitable service provision when it comes to justice, when it comes to any of the services we're receiving. So, I mean, it is very loaded, right? So I'm really happy that we decided to tackle number 40. But I think even just this 6-minute conversation, we might have to tackle it again and have some youth in here to kind of give their perspective.
Experiential. Yeah, that's good. So that's a good start on the first call to action, number 40. And how do we wrap that up?
You know what I'm almost thinking, and maybe between the three of us, we can kind of come to a call to action. So when you look at, you know, such a big call to action, what is one takeaway, really, at the end of it? So I would say the first step, or one of my kind of key takeaways is making sure that we're creating programs that are designed for an individual with respect to where they're coming from, how they got there, and how we're going to help to mobilize change forward.
That's right. And for mine, culturally supportive and being able to learn the process, because a lot of things, and especially the judicial and the legal system, is very, very scary for a child. It's very scary for a youth and the family involved. So just to have that support, to be able to be available, to know where to look, and to be able to help that person understand. There is a few programs, but there's not many. So to be those people in the community at a grassroots level to help say, hey, I'll come and support you.
Mm-hmm. And I guess for me, it's having that voice and include those that are going to be using and who do use these services, and making sure that we're revisiting with them if these services are working and if things need to be changed and revamped. I think that's one of my takeaways for this.
Miigwech, that's awesome. Beginning to our TRC calls to action, and that was number 40. Thank you.
So again, thanks. First episode where we're going to start really kind of picking apart these calls to action. So really happy that I get to do it kind of in the safety and comfort of my workplace. So
Thank you.
MGJ.